Good evening, viewers. We have with us Dr. JNVLIVE Vyas, an economist, a thinker, and of course the statesman. And the topic today is the bleeding rupee, the bleeding Indian rupee, the depreciating Indian rupee. Dr. Vyas, welcome to this joint initiative of JNVLIVE and DATELINE GUJARAT. And the bleeding rupee, the depreciating rupee reminds me in the times. The reason I have worn today pink is there's a lot of Me Too happening. And there have been forwards on WhatsApp which shows a rupee crying saying me too. So could you just explain what is the meaning of the exchange rate in context to the way Indian rupee has been depreciating? It has been a matter of worry. That's the reason we have decided to take this topic.
See,
so what is the meaning of the exchange rate?
Before we come to that,
yes,
just understand. You very rightly started with the question that what is the meaning of the exchange
rate?
Very true, because when you talk of rupee getting depreciated, there has to be something in context of which it is happening.
True.
So unless we understand the exchange rate, which means that at what rate a particular currency could be exchanged.
Very true.
Now there are three kinds of exchange rates. One is the floating exchange rate, where you permit the currency to float and fend for its own way.
It's a kind of flexible exchange
second
rate.
Is fixed exchange rate, where the government fixes it. This is the pricing. That's all. I mean, and third is managed exchange
rate,
where you intervene. You know, we will come to that. Managed exchange rate is not always something which it exists in isolation. At times you have both the things. The floating exchange rate where you have currency freely adjusted as a float, fixed exchange rate as we indicated, but managed exchange rate is this kind of a system. Exchange rate is partially allowed to fluctuate. Governments don't allow fluctuation more than 1 to 3% for their own reasons.
So what is happening with the Chinese currency? You can call it, it's a kind of a managed exchange rate?
Yes, it is. So when
the Chinese yuan is more or less an example of a managed exchange rate.
Absolutely. So when you do that, it is that. Now the system we have to understand. When we talk about the depreciating rupee and all, when you started, what is it that decides the value of rupee?
True.
We are today in the era of par value system. Now, par value under this system, 1947 till 1971, each member of the IMF,
that's the International Monetary Fund,
undertook to maintain the par value of its currency in terms of either gold or the US dollar.
So could you just explain in terms of par value, in terms of gold?
See how much gold
you hold?
In a way, I would say it is an intrinsic value.
Okay.
In a way, currency value is what? Currency value is your total assets and debt.
Okay.
The more you have on the debt side, the currency value actually goes down, depreciating.
True.
So on 15th of August, the exchange rate between Indian rupee and dollar was decided. 15th August 1947.
When India became independent. Okay.
And you will be very excited to know it was 1 rupee.
1 rupee per dollar.
Dollar and rupee were
today
equivalent. But the reason
I think it's aging with the 70 years independence.
It's not that. When the Britishers left, you had very little as a nation, the foreign debt or the balance of payment problem. So for quite some time, in terms of currencies, later date it got revised, and for quite some time the exchange rate was pegged to around 13.33. That is 13 rupees 33 paise for pound sterling and rupees 4.75 per dollar in September 1949.
That was 2 years.
2 years. In 2 years, from 1:1, it became 1:5. 4.7.
Almost 5. You can call it.
So you can say that rupee all of a sudden in 2 years went down 5 times.
5 times.
Then this went on till June 1966, when I was studying mathematics. This was the exchange rate by which we were converting the money. Then in 1966 June, the rupee was devalued by 36.5%.
Okay.
And the value came to 21 rupees per pound. And $1 equal to 7 rupees and 10 paise.
Okay.
This system continued till 1971.
Okay.
When the Bretton Woods system collapsed with the suspension of convertibility of the dollar by the USA, then the currency rates went on going up. And
then it was beyond control, you can call it, kind of.
I would say that, you are an economy which is an inward looking economy. You are such a huge market that number of things you will need, you are importing. In a way, it is a disadvantage or disincentive for those who want to go for export. We say that our India's export trade is barely 1.7% or 1.8%
yes.
of the world trade. So I'm not surprised by that, because when you have so much of an opportunity, this is a market which is so diverse. You can sell a shirt which is 200 rupees and you can sell a shirt which is 20,000 or even more.
True.
Now this is the
diversity of the market.
Band of the market.
True.
And the demand.
Yes.
Which can consume huge quantums of the items, and as Professor C.K. Prahlad said, bottom of the pyramid. Which is so huge.
It's a classic example.
So India,
I mean nowadays, if you're talking bottom of pyramid, even the perfumes are coming in sort of, some like 40 shots or 50 shots.
Look at the shampoo
sachets are the best. Yeah.
Even butter gets briquettes.
Yeah.
Parle biscuits, which are paper thin now, they have not increased the price, but they have decreased the size of the biscuits. This is what it is. So I am not that disappointed with India having some kind of a lesser export trade, because you have such a huge incentive.
It's inward economy.
And second thing is that the value of the Indian currency, when you talk about that, why it declined against US dollar.
So when Britishers left, it was like they did not leave with much of debt, and Indian rupee was almost at par with the dollar.
Yes.
In 2 years' time, Indian rupee depreciated 5 times, you can call it.
Almost.
It came to 4.75.
Yes.
In 66, that is 47 to 66 if we talk, that's 20 years, 19 years' time actually. It was almost 7 rupees.
Right.
And then once the Brentwood system was...
that fell through.
That system collapsed. And then I think it became a free currency and kind of area.
Yes.
But Dr. Vyas, when you say of this, why the value of Indian currency declined against dollar in past? What were the reasons?
There are numerous reasons.
Okay.
The first was since we had limitation of export trade.
Okay.
There was lack of the fund in the hands of the government. That was the first thing.
So when you became independent.
Okay. Then you had 2 wars.
You had wars with China and Pakistan.
2 wars with Pakistan. Then Bangladesh was liberated.
True.
Then political instability and oil shock of 1973. Especially post-emergency government also was not all that stable. So when there is a political instability, there is almost nobody's business running the country. And
again, wars also cost you a lot of
money.
Debts, I suppose.
And the fourth was economic crisis of 1991, when you were required, you had almost less than 2 weeks foreign exchange reserves to meet with the import requirements in this country. And you were required to pledge your gold.
Mortgage your gold, basically.
Yes, which was considered to be a very, very...
a sovereign pride and matter, and it was much of a topic of... It was headlines in those days, I understand.
These are all the major factors, I said. There are other reasons also. The inelastic import bill, because of petroleum products. It is totally inelastic. A country which imports 80% of the crude oil requirement, and where the population increase and also the increased purchasing power in the hands of the middle class and upper middle class. The consumption of oil for transport also goes on increasing. So what happens is that the oil bill went on increasing. This year, it might cross $100 billion. Now, import of gold in huge quantity. In India, you will be surprised. We are supposed to be a poor country. But if you look at the total quantum of gold held in India privately, Reserve Bank doesn't have much of a gold reserve, but total quantum of gold held by the
households or the per capita
privately is 9% of the gold available in the world from the day gold was found
in the world. Okay.
So it's a huge
inventory, you can call it.
And we have certain customs, then the ornaments that go with our lifestyle, and also the festivities when we wear these ornaments, and especially ladies, their love and affection for the different designs and ornaments. Import of luxury goods, you know, television to computers.
I mean, now even the mobile phones.
No, almost everything. You know, you will be surprised to know that after oil, the next highest foreign exchange component is by electronic items.
Yeah, but I mean, a 6-inch phone costs you 60,000 bucks, and similar to the price of the LED screen or a LCD screen television of a 50-inch.
Yes, then so that nuclear test of Pokhran, which brought in some sanctions also.
True.
Then Asian financial crisis of 1997.
That had made some impact.
Global financial slowdown
down in 2007.
You know, for which Professor Raghuram Rajan, our ex-Reserve Bank governor, is credited to predict it much in advance.
The Lehman Brothers crisis, basically.
True. Global financial slowdown of 2007-2008,
and then the
European sovereign debt
crisis in 2011. The pigs nation crashing, basically. The Portugal,
Brexit,
Italy, and
so I think there are various reasons that have been responsible for the crisis.
True.
The main is the limited availability of foreign exchange in the hands of the government to finance the imports that you are required to make compulsorily, as 80% of your oil, which is a substantial quantum of energy that you can consume, is being imported.
But then how do you talk on the lack of funds, you know, in terms of the hands of the government, and how did it really balance?
So you need foreign exchange for that.
Okay.
And when you don't have it, either you reduce your imports, or you increase your exports. Both the things are not possible. You are not able to go beyond anytime I think you cross 2% of the world trade, that will be a great day for India. You are not able to do that. And on the other hand, you are not able to control your imports.
But I think it was an interesting journey, the way Britishers left us with a little debt and, I mean, or no debt kind of a situation. And then the way nation has progressed, you know, with this sort of, I mean, it was, you can call it a controlled currency regime. You can
controlled currency regime, and now also, you know, there with more than 400 billion foreign exchange reserves.
Yeah.
This year, it was intervention by the Reserve Bank of India. I think that has kept, to some extent, the rupee
a little balanced.
Sure. So these are various reasons because of which you go with the kind of situation that we are talking about.
Very true, very true. But then in that scenario, sir, in this scenario, you rightly said that Reserve Bank of India has been it has intervened a little to try to control that free fall of rupee. But Dr. Vyas, what does really a free falling rupee really mean for the economy like ours, you know, I mean? Which is again, I see it a very interesting kind of situation. You import an oil. To import the oil, you import a currency, and out of that earning, whatever you say, the 9% gold reserve, what you said, of that, you even import that commodity. And to import every commodity, you import again a currency. So what does a free falling rupee really mean for an economy?
There are
like
various reasons. The first, as you very rightly identified, is that if you want to stop it or if you want to intervene it, you have to make imports more expensive, so that there is a little break on imports, and makes export cheaper. So export incentives and other facilities.
But a classic example I'll tell you of imports, how what is happening in India today. I was just talking to somebody the other day. People do not buy furniture for their new homes now from India. They go to China, they travel China, and they bring that furniture, and then too it is equivalent to the cost of the furniture they would have bought from here. So I mean, this situation, you know,
this is when you, on one hand, you want to go for free economy.
Yeah.
You want to put all the restrictions away from you. You have a huge market back home.
Yes.
You are not able to cater to that market. Not you are talking about furniture. There are a number of small toys which
even Ganesha is being imported,
which are being sold on the footpath. They are from China with Chinese origin. So, on one hand, there is an unsatiable demand. You are with all the tall talks about the enterprise and all that. You are not able to meet with that. So every festival.
So challenge is make in India and stopping the Chinese import. I mean, there's a huge gap in between.
I won't be sold to those fancy slogans. The issue is that you look.
No, but there is a huge gap. What I mean to say, make in India and Chinese imports. There's a huge gap to be balanced.
Listen, don't worry about China.
Okay.
I think you seem to be unnecessarily.
No, when it comes to imports, I suppose.
No, China is not your major. Your main problem is oil imports.
Okay.
And the next is electronic items.
Okay.
So China, don't get into it. China, yes, China is able to sell so many things to India. There are no restrictions. Every even festival, China could provide you better fashion rakhis. China could provide you
better crackers and better kite flies.
China could provide you better string. China could provide you. They were all knowledgeable about our festivals, perhaps more than our own people.
I mean, traders, even the yoga mats on the International Yoga Day.
Traders or manufacturers. Yeah. So, if you do not meet with the competition, and if you want to live only in a protected regime, this is what could happen.
What could happen?
So I think we need a lot of soul searching. Slogans will not work. You have to be very clear about doing some.
There should be an action basically to curb the imports, mainly the oil and, as you said rightly, the electronic items.
Yes. Then more expensive imports, they drive the inflation up.
True.
So that is again something which depreciates the rupee. See, basically, what is the currency? Currency has an intrinsic value.
Okay.
So, the same 100 rupees which could purchase 1 tola of gold
at one time
in 1950 has an intrinsic value of equal to 1 tola of gold. Now, 1 tola of gold, that is 10 grams of gold, costs you what? How much? 35,000 rupees?
35,000, yeah.
So, 100 rupees cannot buy 35,000
kind of thousand.
So, that is where you have to have more 100 rupees. So, you depreciate your currency and ultimately end up with falling rupee. That is what we are talking about.
True. So I mean, more or less you're telling that imports needs to be curbed, a kind of depreciation needs to be brought
in. Is it in your hand? My $1,000,000 question to you is,
yeah, I mean, you have to talk on that.
Import of oil, I concede a point that they are not in your hand.
True.
Fine. What you could have done when $30 a barrel was the oil price in the world market, how you could have
inventories.
How you could have stored it and inventory was created and then it could have been used at this time is a different matter. Now that opportunity,
that curve is lost.
Let's not talk about it.
That curve is lost.
Let's not talk about it.
Yeah.
It's a gone opportunity.
It's a gone opportunity.
Now I can understand that your oil dependency and because of that your requirement of foreign exchange. But a country which claims to be having and it's a matter of pride that you have made great achievements in manufacturing supercomputer.
Yeah.
You are able to launch satellites for other countries. You are able to have the software and other developments and all that. You have fallen flat as far as the consumer electronic industry is concerned.
True.
There you are beaten hands down by China.
I mean, your Oppos and Vivos are making the way in Indian market. Your MIs and your OnePlus are making the way in the Indian market.
All
you've not been able to address that war.
All these years, what you have forgotten is you perhaps were over-focused, or maybe the effect of the Silicon Valley, which brought the certain electronics and software development and computer-related IT industry in
the STPIs basically
in India.
Yeah.
You have not been able to answer the rising demand because you, on one hand, you want India to be at par with, as far as living standards are concerned, at par with any developed country in the world. And the moment you want to do it, the basic requirement for making human life more comfortable are the gadgets. And all these gadgets are, whether you take even air conditioner, television, you take washing machines, you are all foreign mark items which are being sold here.
This brings to me a very brilliant point. We'll take this on a discussion in coming days, because IT, the way IT industry has grown in India, and the way it is now on the verge of collapse with the cloud and everything happening, and the way you rightly said, the hardwares are not happening in India. In one of the interviews, Lord Desai said to me, Meghnad Desai said to me, that the West is the innovator, East is the consumer. And rightly this is happening, that we are not able to make innovations probably somewhere. But that would be someday, we'll take this, we'll definitely take this topic.
In that situation, would prefer a strategy which China adopted.
True.
But then China had certain advantages, like when they decide that this will be the wage rate, this will be the wage rate.
True.
The ease of doing business, you are clear when government tells you that come here and put your factory here, you are clear what kind of wages you will pay, you are clear what kind of other dues will be applicable to you, and that's all.
And secondly, vocational trainings also matter, because Tim Cook has rightly said in one of the statements, the Apple head, that if I want some certain sort of developers in Silicon Valley in USA, he said probably my office room would be too much to get those developers. I won't get that number of developers. And he said in a place like China, if I call for certain developers, he said a huge convention hall gets jam-packed. So probably a kind of focus even on the vocational education is one of the areas I think China has
we have missed the bus in that. Why I tell you that our GDP has changed.
Yes.
Once upon a time, our GDP was more or less contributed by agriculture and industry. From there, it has now gone to 60% by service sector.
Yes.
And remaining 40% by industry and agriculture.
True.
Now, when you have such a huge contribution by the service sector, which college has a curriculum which is focused on the service sector?
On the service sector.
You even today with 60% of the GDP, you are still teaching the same things which will produce clerks and babus. Now, if you don't change your syllabus, if you don't, what Dr. Manmohan Singh's few years back told, I distinctly remember that creating a graduate means engineers and making them readily employable. No, his word is readily employable are two different things. So you are able to perhaps create graduates who are not readily employable.
True.
And that is why your education is creating a kind of an army of jobless youth. So this is where the shoe pinches.
We definitely talk on this topic someday, because this is a very interesting topic of how the comparisons and what would be the IT from here from now, from back office of the world.
Right.
But this brings to a very interesting question when you say of reducing the imports and trying to control the currency, trying to depreciate your currency. Again, the Chinese model of depreciating the yuan.
Right.
Again, that brings to a kind of the first format which you said, that's the managed exchange rates. In that situation, is erosion of the Indian rupee justified as compared to the few global benchmark currencies? The global benchmark currencies also have depreciated, sir.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
See, rupee has weakened against US dollars. That's a fact of life now.
That's a fact of life.
But in last 5 years, their Indian rupee has appreciated against almost all other major currencies. Except dollar and euro.
Euro and pound probably.
See, if you look at the world trade and the world monetary basket,
yes,
66 point plus of it comes from dollar, and about 25% from euro. So all the currencies put together barely are 10%. Now, in that kind of a scenario, other currencies have also depreciated vis-a-vis rupee, but then rupee has depreciated vis-a-vis dollar. So a weak rupee against the US dollar have a significant impact on India's economy. Since US dollar
is a global currency.
It's a main currency.
It's a global
for the
instrument of exchange, you can call it.
For the international trade.
Yeah.
So you have a problem there, that you are a poor exporter and you have a weak currency and you have major imports. So, or other compulsory imports if we talk about oil. So, it starts that American economy that has now witnessed its highest growth, under this gentleman Trump.
Yeah.
The American economy is going upswing. The unemployment,
the job data and everything,
unemployment has reduced. The economy is now improving, and because of that, the situation is changing.
I think the biggest asset for them has been the shale gas reserves, which is making a kind of a sentiment.
Let us not again go back to the oil focused discussion. This is the only one factor. There are the steps taken by Trump basically.
I mean, what he said in his election agenda, he has delivered. That's what you can call it.
He has delivered.
Yes.
See, he has made Chinese imports of $200 billion more costly, which has triggered the currency war.
Trade wars and currency wars.
Trade war and currency war. And he has also considerably tightened the American job market, where the outsourcing and also the outside job seekers coming to US and creating problem for the US citizens, considerable extent have been reduced. So because of that, America's recent policy is like be American, buy American.
I mean, that impact was even seen on the NYSE and the Dow in just last few days. The way it had fired, the stocks had fired.
Yes.
So that job data, the moment the job data came out, that impact was definitely seen.
The side impact of it is that it has triggered currency war between US and China. So post subprime crisis, American central bank, US Fed actively reduced interest rates to nearly zero.
Yes.
From there now, but that also led to a lot of funds flow into emerging markets. Because when you are getting money in US at zero rate, obviously if you are buying power and banks also willing to lend you money, you will take from those banks and invest those money
into the emerging markets.
They have global markets before them because US dollar is a global currency.
Sure.
So invest them in that market till such time the returns are better, competitive. Now that has brought a lot of FCNR deposits and other kind of investments in stocks and
several
other instruments. Now,
but there is an interesting thing, Dr. Vyas, I want to share you. I had shared with you the link of that movie called Chinese Hustle.
Yes.
You need to see that. The way the Chinese companies have got listed on the US stock markets and the way, they have shaved off the money of the investors, that is also an interesting side.
No,
we definitely talk on that someday. But
I think
I think you are rightly on that path.
That is a different issue.
Attracted a lot of investment, the foreign currency.
I am trying to explain that when the Fed is zero interest rate policy, American buyers will get almost no advantage because investors are borrowing dollars and investing
in the world market
anywhere, including India. So our FII and FDI investments
had gone up. And the reason now they are going down is the reason the interest rates have increased in US.
Yes. So, and there is a talk of its further increase.
And I mean the US bond is one attractive instrument after your gold and whatever you call it.
Yes.
Or the US dollar.
So, dollar has become more pricey.
Yes.
And this will mean that there will be higher returns on the dollar deposits as compared to other currencies. So obviously everything goes towards dollars. So if I am holding currency deposits in yen, Deutschmark or any other currency,
that goes in dollars.
If I want to convert it, I will today convert it into dollar because it is appreciating.
It gives me a good return with a high interest rate.
So once that happens, what happens? Once that happens, what happens?
The liquidity squeeze.
The demand for dollar goes up.
Yes.
The demand for dollar goes up and dollars become stronger and stronger. That is also another problem or another headache for Indian rupee.
That's true.
Because on the other hand, dollar is becoming stronger, and that stronger dollar again is a major problem as far as we are concerned.
So I think you rightly explained that why the USD has appreciated or may keep appreciating for some more time. But could you just throw some more light that would this trigger a kind of a liquidity squeeze? Dollar becoming stronger, what sort of an impact would really that have on the Indian rupee?
It will have tremendous impact.
Okay.
See, the strength of American economy that has started growing at 4.2%. It was projected, even based off the projections for the Trump regime, was American economy growing at 4%.
4%.
Now it is doing 4.2%. So that is in second quarter of 2018. It is the highest growth since the third quarter of 2014. So after 5 years, the American economy is showing the upswing.
It's
showing the upswing, and that is one reason. The US has tightened policies that allowed cheaper imports in the country. This means imported goods to US will be costly.
I mean, it has tightened the policy in terms of manpower import as well as the goods import. Both I can call it. The immigration, the way the immigration policies have taken.
The policies have been tightened. Goods have been tightened.
Yeah.
And the third, that US under President Trump is seeking a fair balance of trade with partnering countries, asking them to lower taxes on American products. That will mean there will be more American products exported, that will improve inflow of
USD into the American
dollars into American economy.
True.
And beyond that is America is the largest importing country for both manufactured goods as well as services. Trump's America First policy aims to bring manufacturing and many services back to America.
Yes.
That aims to lower unemployment, which is now very low, and lower outflow of US dollars. So I think with all the people who are talking that this fellow is a crack and he might take America to a problematic situation. I think Trump has delivered.
Yes, turn around the whole economic situation. From the 2008 crisis,
which was nosediving. It has brought it up to 4.2%, and also he is effectively, see, he said he is determined to tighten the job market. He is determined to put that Mexican border wall. He has put heavy duties on American imports, making imports difficult or costlier. And with the dollar tightening, the Fed also is now thinking, next meeting they are thinking of further increasing the interest
now
rates. Once Fed rate goes up,
the dollar demand will
and dollar inflow will also increase.
I mean, an investment in dollars and bonds will again take place. American bonds.
I think you are in the worst possible scenario. India, on one hand, oil shortage,
exactly,
and oil crisis.
The last talk was that high-priced oil and high-priced rupee.
Yes.
How will you balance this tightrope? 2019 elections, 3 state elections.
Why are you
very sentimental issue.
This is a technical discussion. I am not concerned with the elections. I am concerned. There is this. Somebody said that war is dangerous, but currency wars are more dangerous.
I mean, the way economic and currency wars are.
Elections may come and go. Elections may deliver, may not deliver. But if your country is surviving, if the country economy is doing well, whatever be the government, maybe with little bit plus minus, you will be able to float around. But this is not going to happen because the fall in the rupee can primarily be attributed, as we were discussing, to the global factors. One, now let's come to rising crude oil prices. India, which imports over 80% of its crude oil, needs to spend over $100 billion. And if you do that on importing 20 million tons of crude oil, which was the figure in 17-18, so it might slightly go up. A costlier import oil will mean the currency taking a further hit. Then the next factor is double whammy of weak rupee and higher crude oil price has led to a sustained rise in fuel prices in India, with petrol prices crossing 90 per litre in several cities. 65% of the fuels are consumed by the transport sector.
True.
Now, once you touch that, you are promoting overall cost increase in the country. As energy cost goes up, this is a further increase in that. So the dollar, the worst still is the dollar has been strengthening thanks to the robust economy, as we discussed. Federal Reserve steady hike in interest rates has made investments in US Treasuries more attractive, thus resulting in the fund flows out of emerging markets.
So it's a kind of liquidity squeeze in the emerging markets, you can call it?
It is a reverse flow.
So it's a tariff war plus a liquidity squeeze, which is making an impact on your currency equally, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So interest rate hike by the US
Federal Reserve,
that will result into the flight of capital from emerging markets, debt and equities.
So, but in that scenario, do you see the Reserve Bank of India will have to come forward and take some steps on increasing the interest rates?
Let us put it for the
because that's a goalpost to goalpost game, I suppose.
For just a minute.
Yeah.
Let us put it on the back burner.
Yes.
Now, if you look at the FPIs, National Security Depository shows that FPIs took out 15,366 crore from the debt and equity markets in September alone.
Yeah.
And rupees 55,828 crore in 2018
calendar year
so far.
And that's the reason that has an impact on your stock market.
You mark the word so far.
So that is the reason you have the impact on the stock markets?
Possibly.
Yeah.
This could be one of the
FIIs
factors,
are moving out.
Some of the major factor, because see, stock market was firing on all pistons.
FII money.
On FII money.
I mean, you had a good results of HDFC or Reliance, but the parties were done in Singapore and Dubai, obviously.
Yes.
It never happened in India.
So, this 55,822 crore is up to September 2018 and the calendar year 2018 year to end. So, my belief is this will touch about 80,000 crore.
By the year end, that is March 2019.
No, by the calendar year 2018.
So December, you mean to say? We are talking this in October.
Yes, still 10-15,000 crore might still migrate.
So we are at 55.
That is where, you know, I don't want to fuel any kind of a speculation.
Forecast
but
speculation.
Somebody has said that the Sensex might touch 30,000. This is what is it.
So it has started tumbling towards that.
It's going towards that, yes.
It's going towards that.
It is going. You remember about 6 months back when we discussed.
Yes.
This is precisely what I said, that this appears to be a scenario. Weakening rupee, it is going to make life much more difficult, and strengthening
oil prices,
which might see. Recently there were meeting, I think, of all oil producing countries managers. The interesting statement was made by Saudi Arabia, perhaps, that there is no problem, we will be able to supply the oil that may be required by India, but on price we can't guarantee. It might be in 3 figures. So you should be prepared for this double whammy: weakening rupee and
the high oil prices. So you mean to say life is not going to be again easy economically? What you said during the demonetization time?
No.
Another 1 year?
Yes.
At least?
No, not 1 year. You know, this all put together, which we are coming to little later stage, this costly oil and dwindling rupees.
Because my thali has already gone 10 rupees up. The other day I was eating outside, it was 80 rupees before 2 months, it has now gone to 90 rupees.
Don't now bother to even collect back 10 rupees out of your 100 rupees.
Okay. It might touch 100, you mean to say?
It might go beyond that.
Okay.
So, this might push up our current account deficit. See, worst is that I am not worried about anything else. The current account deficit as of now is already 1.9.
Yeah.
And it might, by end of December, it might be 2.2. And should it go to 2.5, that will be a worst ever financial crisis as far as the government's fund management and the government's management of the Indian rupee is concerned.
That would be worse than even 1991, you mean to say?
Yeah,
when it was
1991, it was still better.
Yeah.
This might be worse than 1991. And I hope I am wrong.
We are in a bit of the discussion.
I would pray
God, of course.
I go wrong.
Is the rupee free fall primarily due to the tariff wars or the liquidity squeeze?
There are 3 things. You know, don't ascribe it to one.
Okay.
One is that you are an economy where now it is becoming increasingly difficult to meet both the ends. Just 6 years back, you were talking about the current account deficit of 0.5%, and at one point of time almost 0.
Okay.
Now you are talking about the CAD of 2.5%. You are talking about rupee which might cross 80 rupees against the dollar. You are talking about oil prices which might cross $100 per barrel.
Okay.
Now you put all these three things and then add on to that the trade war impact.
The trade war impact
Between these China
and the liquidity squeeze happening out of your markets, of which the money is being invested into the bonds or other instruments.
The recession, liquidity squeeze, the stock market sentiment which is becoming very, very dull. All these things indicate to one thing. I again hope and pray that I go wrong, but the sentiment indicates that we are heading towards some kind of a major financial crisis. Because how long? US also wants to control you. They want to take out your India from the watch out list. The latest reports, provided you don't become irresponsible and sell dollar in the market so that your rupee sustains. So they don't want you to sell dollars also recklessly.
True.
So from we have from $450 billion foreign exchange reserve, we have come to 400, now 300. 350, and then you have hot deposits like FCNR and all those, where they have option to convert it and take it away. So they brought it to the country when there was a favorable situation. They are absolutely justified that before them the entire world is for investment. So if they pull these deposits out and invest it somewhere else, even including United States of America,
the way the interest rates are rising,
they will have better returns. So you have to blame yourself, nobody else. This is a situation which is likely to happen, and if you are not forcing it, then I think you can't blame anybody else. I won't blame the extraneous factors or anybody, because if this is happening, this is not overnight happening. This is building up for at least last 1 year.
So, but then do you mean to say that the deadly cocktail of the costly rupee and dwindling, the costly oil and dwindling rupee,
Yes.
It's a kind of a headwind or a tailwind?
Yeah, it is. It cannot be a tailwind.
Indian economy.
I was happy if it would have been a tailwind. It is I would say tornado hitting right at the nose of the plane.
True.
So it is headwind, not a tailwind.
So, but how do you see? Comparatively, if you see the economic stability in the last 3 years, all these factors provided.
See, we were talking about the macroeconomic stability, and we were tom-tomming from the rooftop about our stability, that we have now kept our fiscal deficit under control. We have eliminated almost revenue deficit. We have now the current account deficit under control. Once we tried to control by restricting gold imports. Now you can't restrict oil imports. You did it by restricting gold imports. Now you have no option left out but to submit to the inevitable. So oil imports will not be curbed, because this country, thinking about the government putting severe restrictions on oil consumption or energy consumptions, is a far cry. It will not happen.
No, but there is one talk which is there that your petrol pump, fuel pumps are not calibrated for the 3-digit figure on a per liter basis or a per unit basis. So they are telling that if the prices rise, it will be sold on per half liter.
So that is all right. When the sky is falling.
Do you see that situation happening? Would that rationing of fuel really happen?
No, it won't help.
It won't help.
It won't help, because you have already been consuming, the transport sector, 65% of the petrol and diesel.
Okay. So you don't see that situation? No. Okay, but the dwindling rupee plus the payment of balance,
Yes.
What sort of cascade effect do you see when you talk of current account deficit or the fiscal deficiency in the system?
See, as I told you, first of all, it has thrown now all your talk about FRBM.
FRBM, true.
Yeah, it has gone now. You can't say that we are a very good manager of our
financials of our country.
No.
A clear no.
You are in a situation which is partly to your own creation, partly the creation of unforeseen or God. American economy improving under Trump perhaps is something which you might not have considered.
Yeah.
US and China's trade war perhaps might not
You never thought.
Though a very shrewd diplomatic observation would have forecasted it at least 6 months before they started.
The way Dr. Raghuram Rajan wrote a paper on 2007-8, which was studied by Dr. Manmohan Singh, and the appropriate steps and Manrega and everything was done.
Let us not bring the personalities into picture.
Yeah, I mean that
we don't
could have
by
happened.
no chance we want to bring in any political leadership.
No, I mean that as you say that the shrewd diplomatic view.
We are purely committed to the subject.
Now, when we talk of the shrewd diplomatic view, this could have been a foresee.
Something which, if you and I can see,
yes,
those experienced people who are armed with a
battalion of
experts.
Yes, why can't they see?
They could have foreseen.
They could have foreseen.
And there are a number of agencies in the world also which
are talking.
International Energy Agency onwards, there are a number of agencies.
Moody's International Agency, all your rating agencies, everybody has been talking.
Recent report that has come regarding the Fed reserves and balances, it's fairly indicative. You look at it, the way with precision they analyze Indian economy. I think it's worth going through.
Nobody can really do that. That's very true. So, but then in that situation and that scenario, how do you see the impact on the financial markets in India per se?
See, financial market will be under strain. Let's agree.
Okay.
If you measure it by the liquidity that you had when FII flows were very liberal, and you had virtually non-stoppable flow of foreign currency, non-resident deposits and accounts. These are hot deposits. So those investments in our gilts, bonds and deposits, which are convertible and which are repatriable, they are the hot money. They will be migrating from here. So with that, the impact will be that the stock market that you are seeing that has started taking a nosedive. Now this is partly true, partly it is a panic driven.
Okay.
But people don't know that it is a panic driven reaction.
Sure.
So ultimately it will have an impact on the overall this thing. So you have a higher higher GDP growth, but at the same time you will have higher current account deficit, weaken rupee further, stoke inflation and lead to higher bond yields.
So it's not going to be easy.
It's not going to be.
It's not going to be easy. RBI's mandate is more or less now inflation. We being an inward economy. But will the depreciating rupee really spoil the sport?
See, they don't want to.
Inflation
I think RBI is more focused on inflation.
Okay.
Because that touches day-to-day life of the people, and also they are perhaps not wanting to touch the rupee for the time being.
Okay.
That you depreciated it. Though when your dollar is increasing, what we talk about price purchase parity. So in price purchase parity, automatically there is a depreciation that you find in the value of rupee, because you are able to purchase lesser goods with rupee.
Yes.
And you are able to purchase more goods with the dollar.
Yes.
So the intrinsic value of rupee is going down. Price purchase parity point of view also rupee is going down. And in that scenario, the Indian financial markets, and add on to that the scams that the banks that are rocking the banks, including the worst is that ILFS, which is 90,000 crore.
I mean the NBFC packet completely. So NBFC packet completely.
So this is going to be a difficult thing for the financial market.
So it's just not the NPA and banking now, it's the NBFC, which is a kind of a subprime crisis for the Indian market basically. Yes. No doubt about that. So it's not going to be easy time even for RBI balancing this thing.
So RBI to an extent they can balance, they will balance.
Yeah.
This year sold something like $30 billion in the market.
Okay.
Next year maybe $50 billion. But then from thereafter, where from they will get the money? And again, US is not very happy with your selling the dollars in the market.
Okay.
So there are several factors.
I understand. But then depreciation of currency is the way out to an extent?
It could be.
So again, that comes to the same thing that your money.
But RBI I think RBI will resort to that as the last
thing to do that. This brings us to the last.
Somehow, currency devaluation is linked with the national pride.
True.
That the currency devaluation, no, people don't understand it as an economic issue. or something which is compulsion of the economy, they consider it is a national pride. Our rupee devalued. Our rupee cannot be devalued.
That was the talk, basically.
Yes.
That rupee should not devalue.
So RBI again is not of the opinion of devaluating the.
But even I think RBI, when it has a mandate of just controlling the inflation, I mean, how they're going to really bring in that goalpost, where investors worldwide start investing into the masala bonds or the Indian bonds or kind of thing. Interest rate revision is the core concern, I suppose. Even to, further prevent the rupee from the depreciation. You will have to bring those foreign investments. If you're talking 50,000 crore, 55,000 crores today,
that will not
by calendar you're talking 80,000 crores.
That will not come unless you make your investments attractive.
Instruments
are not attractive not because of only one factor.
Yeah.
There are several factors, including the ease of doing business.
True.
So this is not an easy thing to remedy. But I think the RBI's policy to meet with this kind of situation, or their response to this, first will be to keep the powder dry.
Okay.
To meet with any contingency. As any external risks get out of hand, then keep the powder dry. At that time you can think about devaluation of the rupee and all other measures. Then the decision to keep rates steady might also work in favor of the government, which will prefer to borrow at cheaper rates in the run-up to the general election
next year.
So if you keep the rate steady, ultimately government will be able to borrow funds at cheaper rates, and towards the run-up to the election it will be helpful.
Okay.
Third is bond yields have been on a steady rise since last year, as investors have been spooked by fears over the fiscal deficit and shift in global interest rate, which is becoming now abundantly clear that their fears, worst of the fears perhaps, are coming true. The fourth is the RBI's decision not to raise rates may lift the sentiments of the consumers and businesses at a time when the economy enters the busy season and the festival demand kicks in. So they will have funds, and the law of elasticity of demand will be in their favor. The biggest challenge facing the RBI will be the prospect of further rate hikes by the US Federal Reserves and central banks in other developed economies, which could force the central bank to look beyond
its inflation mandate. So you mean to say that Reserve Bank will have to look beyond the inflation mandate?
They might be.
If the situation continues to worsen.
They will have to.
Okay. Dr. Vyas, this brings us to the last question of this debate, of this discussion basically. On one hand, there are geopolitical issues.
Yes.
There are disruptive short-term business models.
Right.
There are no big-ticket investments really happening in India.
Right.
Stock markets are absolutely melting down slowly, gradually.
Yes.
How do you see the economy and the rupee from here?
So it's interesting. I just brought here to the table one of the most knowledgeable and expert investment banker, James Rickards.
Okay.
He penned his book, The New Battleground of Future Wars among the economic superpowers.
Okay.
It was not nuclear or chemical.
It was a currency
but
war.
Financial war. And his subject of the book appropriately was currency wars. Is very apt in today's context, and the world actually fears one between the two economic superpowers, America and China. And if that happens, the fallout,
the grass will suffer.
The fallout,
the two elephants will fight, the grass will suffer.
Yes, the fallout effects are bound to hit us also.
True.
Then the recent trade tariffs by the US in steel and aluminium has seen China react with similar levies on US exports. Both are preparing their next list to fire at each other. The trade war is already turning into a currency war, where Chinese currency saw a sharp depreciation of around 8%. This may be a Chinese tactic to neutralize the impact of higher tariff
for its exported
goods in the US. With a depreciated currency, Chinese currency is dropping like a rock, said Trump, advocating the weak dollar
to gain
competitiveness.
So this means the currency war has already begun.
Yes, it has begun.
Okay. And how do you see the geopolitical tensions? What sort of impact do you see?
They will continue. I think geopolitical tensions as they are today
do not
are not different than most of the time.
Okay.
So it will continue.
Okay.
But the greatest relief is now that North Korea has started talking sense, which was one of the most worst fears. But then one fire is doused. There is another fire in Iraq and Iran, which has a potential to become.
So that is the reason I tell. It's a geopolitical tension. It's a currency war.
Yes.
It's a tariff war. It's a situation. You know, how do you
It's a
control
very
the
difficult
currencies?
situation.
It's a difficult
You know, nobody can predict what will happen to your currency, what will happen to your investments, what will happen to your economy. Such a difficult situation, such a sort of blurred vision situation. At least last 40 years, I've been a student
Tracking
of the subject.
Yes.
I have not seen.
So the conclusive remark, Dr. Vyas, now on the currency wars, on the current situation, and how do you see the Indian rupee from here? The conclusive remark, as short as
Indian
possible.
rupee will be in for a very, very difficult time.
And that brings a difficult time for the Indian citizens too. Obviously. Get ready, brace yourself for the impact. The Indian rupee might yet further depreciate, and that would make a life not easy for the Indians over here. What government has to do, we don't know. What are going to be the policies, how they would really try to face this impact and the fears of the currency wars. But yes, for now, the way one of the economists has written, the currency wars with the two superpower currencies, there's the two elephants, when they fight, the grass suffers. Unfortunately, India is a country where the problems of the world also impact the Indian economy, and the solutions to the problems of the world also impact the Indian economy. Thank you for being with us, and once again we'll be back with a new topic to discuss once again on one Saturday and talk as to what lies ahead in the economic issues, where we can debate and discuss. Do bring your suggestions and do give your suggestions as to topics also and what can be discussed further. Thank you for being on this joint initiative.
Yes, join us on the YouTube.
Join us on the YouTube. Now this recording will be available on the YouTube.
Talking Economics to Dr. Vyas. Go to the YouTube, press the red button, also press the bell so that you get automatic intimations whensoever we post a new topic.
And equally we are
very happy that this debate is becoming interesting. We are getting response from virtually one of the top leading economists and also investment bankers. We are encouraged by the response, and we assure you that whatever are the current issues, we will bring to you the independent and correct analysis, unbiased, with any kind of consideration or color.
Yes.
That's our promise to
commitment
you.
And promise to you.
Be with us. Keep watching the YouTube channel Talking Economics to Dr. Vyas. Thank you.
Also do subscribe on the YouTube channel of Dateline Gujarat, that is youtube.com/Dateline Gujarat. This video will also be posted over there, so you can subscribe there also. Press the bell button and do subscribe, so whenever there are uploads over there, you can always have a view of these posts and uploads. Thank you for being with us. Do join us again on the next Saturday. We will discuss as to what lies ahead in the economy of the India and the world. Thank you.